Have you ever been a victim of a data breach? Does it annoy you that these companies never get punished for being so careless with our data? Does it make you mad that the government can ban TikTok but won't protect our privacy and data from American companies? It's on us to protect ourselves. That's why I use Aura, today's sponsor. Aura keeps me safe online by doing all the hard work for me. They will identify data brokers who are selling my information and submit opt-out requests on my behalf. Give Aura a few weeks and you'll stop seeing your information on these sites when you search yourself, which will lead to less spam. Aura will also continuously monitor the dark web and alert me if they find my personal information exposed. They're going to let me know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access my credit or bank accounts. Plus, they give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen. The Aura app also has a VPN with 100 plus virtual locations. Does your current VPN have all these other features too? You can go to my link at aura.com/KrystlynCrime to try a 14-day free trial. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. Thanks again to Aura for sponsoring this video. Hampton Smith was a 25-year-old white planter who owned the Old Joyce Place, a sizable plantation near Morven, Georgia, in Brooks County. Despite some newspaper reports incorrectly stating he was 31 at the time of his death, Smith was known for his harsh treatment of black workers, which made it difficult for him to attract farm labor. To address this issue, Smith, like many other planters, resorted to using convict labor. He would pay fines for black men who had been charged with infractions, such as Sidney Johnson, who was convicted for playing dice and fined $30. Smith would then lease these men's labor by paying the local authorities the fees, while also being responsible for their food and shelter. The practice of convict leasing was poorly regulated, and the workers, often subjected to severe abuse, were caught in what journalist Douglas Blackmun described as slavery by another name. Johnson, for example, endured multiple beatings from Smith, including a violent punishment for refusing to work while sick. Smith's violent tendencies extended beyond Johnson. He had previously beaten Mary Turner, which led her husband, Hayes Turner, to threaten Smith. This act resulted in Hayes Turner being convicted by an all-white jury and sentenced to a chain gang. In an act of retaliation, Sidney Johnson shot Smith and his wife through a window, killing Smith and wounding his wife. Afterward, Johnson fled the scene and managed to evade capture in Valdosta, Georgia, for several days, despite an extensive manhunt conducted by a white mob, mostly in Brooks County. During the manhunt, at least 13 black individuals were killed by white mobs over the following 2 weeks. On May 17th, Will Head and Will Thompson were captured in separate locations. That night, Head was lynched near Troopville in nearby Lowndes County, while Thompson met the same fate near Barney in Brooks County. Walter F. White, an investigator for the NAACP, was informed by mob participants that both men's bodies were shot over 700 times. Additionally, Julius Jones was captured and lynched near Barney as well. Chime Riley, a black man initially rumored to have fled Brooks County, was later discovered to have been lynched, despite having no known connection to Hampton Smith. His body was found in the Little River near Barney, where he had been thrown in to drown. Turpentine cups were tied to his hands and legs to weigh him down. Simon Schumann was taken from his home during the unrest and, according to Walter White, was never seen again, though he had no connection to Hampton Smith. His family was forcibly evicted, and their home was destroyed. Schumann was widely believed by historians to have been lynched during this violent rampage. However, Walter White's initial report on Schumann's disappearance was inaccurate. Newspaper accounts from a month after the events revealed that Schumann had been arrested by Brooks County authorities in late June of 1918. He was implicated in the murder of Hampton Smith by a man named Shorty Ford, who was in custody in Jacksonville, Florida, on charges related to the same murder. On June 25, 1918, Schumann was removed from the Brooks County Jail and taken to an undisclosed location to avoid being lynched. He survived and later relocated to Albany, Georgia. Sidney Johnson, the man responsible for murdering Hampton Smith, made his way to Valdosta, the county seat of Lowndes County, where he hid for several days. When he sought food from another black man, the individual alerted police. Chief Calvin Dampier, along with a group of officers armed with high-powered rifles, went to the house with his brother among them. They engaged in a shootout with Johnson, who was armed with a shotgun and a pistol. Once the shootout ceased, the police entered the house and found Johnson dead. He had wounded both Dampier brothers and Dixon Smith during the confrontation. A mob that had gathered, deprived of the opportunity to lynch Johnson, mutilated his body before dragging it behind a car in a procession down Patterson Street and out to Morven. There, they hanged the body from a tree near the site of Smith's murder and set it on fire. Hayes Turner, an African-American man known to have had conflict with Hampton Smith, was among those arrested during the search for Smith's killer. Turner was lynched after being accused of murder in Lowndes County, Georgia. His death was reported by the Spokesman Review on May 20th, 1918. When his wife, Mary Turner, publicly condemned the lynching, she was also killed, along with their unborn child. Turner was arrested on the morning of May 18th and held in the Valdosta jail. Later that day, County Sheriff Wade and a court clerk claimed that they were transferring him to Quitman, the county seat of Brooks County. However, on the way, Turner was seized by a mob and lynched near Ocapilco Creek, about 3.5 miles from town. His body was left hanging from a tree until the following Monday before it was cut down. Another black man, possibly Eugene Rice, was also lynched that day near the old campground. He was not connected to Smith's murder, according to newspaper reports. About a week later, the bodies of 3 unidentified black men were found in the Little River near Barney. It was unclear whether they were new victims or had been there longer. At the time of the NAACP's investigation by Walter White, the bodies had disappeared from police custody without identification being confirmed. After Hayes Turner's death, his wife, Mary, who was 8 months pregnant, publicly condemned the mob violence and denied that her husband had been involved in Smith's murder. She threatened to have those responsible arrested, prompting the mob to target her next. Though she tried to flee, Mary Turner was captured by a mob of several hundred on May 19th. They took her to a location near the Folsom Bridge over the Little River, which marks the border between Brooks and Lowndes counties. Walter F. White, an investigator for the NAACP, reported that Mary Turner was tied upside down by her ankles, soaked in gasoline, and set on fire. While still alive, her belly was sliced open with a knife, and her unborn child fell to the ground, making 2 faint cries. A member of the mob crushed the child's head with his heel, and the mob shot hundreds of bullets into Mary Turner's body. Afterward, she was cut down and buried near the tree with her child, a whiskey bottle marking their grave. An article in the Atlanta Constitution described the events under the headline, "Fury of the People is Unrestrained." After the lynchings, more than 500 black residents fled the area to escape violence, although white people threatened to kill black workers who attempted to leave. The brutal murders of Hayes and Mary Turner, along with several other black victims, sparked a brief national outcry. These events were highlighted in the NAACP's unsuccessful campaign for federal anti-lynching legislation. In late May of 1918, Lamont Wright was arrested in Jacksonville, Florida. In 1919, he was put on trial in Savannah, Georgia, rather than Brooks County, for safety reasons, on charges of murdering Hampton Smith and assaulting his wife. Just before the trial, a group of men took an African-American prisoner from the Hamilton County Jail in Jasper, Florida, claiming they had legal authority to do so. The man was later found dead in the Withlacoochee River west of Valdosta. His body was bound and had a gunshot wound to the head. His grave, located outside the cemetery and marked with a wooden cross, was surrounded by a deteriorating fence. Local lore suggests the man's death was connected to the Hampton Smith case. Wright was convicted in 2 separate trials. His defense argued that the entire case was a case of mistaken identity and that the real Shorty Ford had been taken from jail and drowned. However, Dixon Smith, Hampton Smith's father, identified Wright as the same Shorty Ford responsible for his son's death. Lamont Wright was executed by hanging on June 3, 1921, at Chatham County Jail. His execution took place on Jefferson Davis's birthday, and Wright went to his death proclaiming his innocence.